What's going on YouTube? We're back at it for another video. Today we're doing the Limgrave guide part 2, finishing up this area, getting the rest of that loot, and then moving on to Lunaria Lakes. We're going to be starting at the Waypoint Ruins cellar. Now, there's more than a few things that we got to cover, so let's get straight into it. Now from the Waypoint Ruins, we'll walk out of that cellar, head over to the right this time, and start heading towards the eastern portion of Limgrave. Now over up on top of here is going to be another one of those crucified bodies with a couple of enemies around it, with a pickled chicken's foot right at the base of it. We'll head over to the left from that, kind of right along this little cliff edge until we get over to the left-turn portion. Over here is going to be another of those down structures where we're going to get another surprise attack from the bush from some of those surprise monkeys, I like to call it. But from that point, we'll keep heading over to the left. You'll cross a couple of bats. Goodness. As frustrating as ever to deal with, even on horseback. But from that point, we'll kind of walk along the left edge of this cliff face. Keep going until we get to a point where it looks like there's a bridge, a little broken down structure. The closer you get, you'll start to hear somebody yelling out that sounds like a very poor salesman, more than a few monkeys to deal with at the very bottom that'll have these glowing red eyes. I'm not exactly sure why, but I believe that may be something to do with the Moog dynasty, maybe, but possibly for a little bit more of those lore videos out there, possibly. But from that point, we'll head up underneath it and get up on top of it, and we'll have a guy to talk to up here that's going to give us a smaller type of side quest line. Then, once we get to the end of it, I'll describe why I believe this may be something that could end up being brought to a bit more fruition when it comes to DLC, maybe possibly later on. But heading past him along that left cliffside edge, we'll come upon another graveyard, grab up some of those golden runes, and then we'll need to head along the edge of that until we're able to get back down. Essentially, we'll have to go back down on that bridge, that way we don't take that fall damage. Nobody wants to be that Tim the Tatman of Elden Ring, but that seems to happen to me quite often, so if you're looking to make that leap of faith, that's one of them you could try to, but at the same time, sometimes it's good to play it safe. But going along that left edge, we'll come upon another one of those trolls. Deal with that pretty quickly. Makes quick work of it. As long as you got that greatsword, it's going to be a heavy hitter when it comes to bringing them to their knees. But over here on our left-hand side, we'll have another of those Church of Americas, and we'll grab up another Sacred Tear and the Lost Grace of this location. You'll notice in front of you as well, this is where we get the Wondrous Flask. But from this location, we're going to head over to the right after I've done a little bit of a twirl. But we'll go up along the beach line. Sadly, nothing on the left side, but we'll start heading along the right coast. And we'll jump up on top of here. Be a little bit of a broken down structure over here, but we'll go off to the left, kind of meet the edge of this beach itself. There'll be a giant crab to deal with over here, but luckily we'll be able to make quick work out of that. Get a little bit of flesh off this body over here. And then we'll head back up onto the mainland. Now over here, we're going to have the SIOFRA River Well. This is exactly one of the locations that we can drop down into the SIOFRA River. I can't recall whether or not there's another way to get down there, but that's going to be the main entrance for it. Now from that point, we'll head back a little bit over to the right. We're going to kind of meet up with the location that we came in from, just off to the left of that bridge that we climbed up on top of, as there's going to be a Lost Grace over here that we'll need to grab up, that we'll need to come back to later on in order to progress that side quest that we've started with that guy on top of that bridge. But from this point, we'll start heading along the right side of the eastern portion of Limgrave, going along this cliff face over here. Now, there's going to be a couple of larger bears in this area, so do be aware of that. Can be quite frustrating. Then there is going to be one of them that we will need to deal with. Now, over here, we'll have another one of those sacrificial twigs inside of this graveyard. More than a few skeletons. Skeletons are a pain to deal with in pretty much any moment that you encounter them. So I would say just walk on by those. No real reason to even take them on, but heading along that right cliff face, we're going to end up at a location over here where, sadly enough, another spot where seems like some missed loot opportunity. We can go up over the to the right side. That'll meet up with the bridge that goes to the Castle Morn area, but we won't be heading in that direction, as we've already collected all that loot in the part 1. But down here, we'll go through that graveyard, grab up those golden runes, and be able to head over to the fort over here on the right after we're done with this little area. More than a few wolves to deal with down here, and they can still be quite frustrating even in New Game Plus. But grabbing up those golden runes, we'll head off down to the right after we're done with this. And there's going to be another one of those lost graces that we'll need to find over here. More than a few of those land squid down here as well. You can take them out if you feel so that you need some more runes possibly, or if you're just looking to beat something down. But definitely not necessary to actually take it down. It's going to be nothing but those runes to gain from killing it. But lucky enough, they're pretty easy to deal with. So, in that moment, I'm going to take my opportunity for a little payback for, as we've seen in past videos, the Squandering Landsquid has been a troublesome one. But over here on the right, it's going to be that Lost Grace. We'll need that later on for when we defeat Radahn and the Nokron Eternal City opens up for later on. That's going to be the Lost Grace that we'll come back to once you've defeated Radahn, and that'll be where the star fell over to our left. Can't miss it. Would be a giant crater in the ground over there. But heading up to the, I can't remember, it's just a fort from what I can remember. I know I'll have it down in the timestamps below what the name is, but for the life of me, cannot remember what the name of it is right now. We'll have, goodness, losing my ability to speak right now. We'll have more than a few of those, are they Lindale Knights? I can't even, I think there's something else. But over here on the right, we'll have that golden rune. We'll have another pumpkin head to deal with, and do be aware you can give that head smackdown. It can be frustrating to get stuck in that stun lock, but once we get inside, be a couple of rats to deal with, more than a few of those crafting material roses around here. Can't remember if there's a difference between that one and the blood rose, or if that one's got some different ability. There will be something on the right inside of here. I can't remember what it was exactly, but apparently it's one of those in New Game Plus that you can't grab up again. Similar to something like the memory stones. But at the top of the fort itself, there will be one knight up here that will drop an Ash of War. I believe this is one that works pretty well to add bleed damage to your abilities, I believe. Can't remember precisely. But up at the top, we'll actually get one of the halves of the DECTUS medallion, I believe. I believe that was the name of it. We'll need that in order to make life a bit easier when we make our way through the Lunaria Lakes and then moving into the Aldous Plateau. But it is actually not absolutely necessary. And if you'd like to know where the other half of that medallion is, it's going to be in the Khalid area. I have that in, I believe, my Part 2 guide of Khalid. But if you want to know where the other half of that medallion is, check out that guide. I'll leave a link down in the description below. But we'll head back to talk to the guy on the broken down structure bridge, overpass, whatever you'd like to call it. He'll be very thankful and give us not exactly the most quality weapon, especially for, giving him back his fort, or castle, if you will. But I guess he only has what he has, especially since he got completely overthrown, but he believes he's supposed to be the new ruler of Lindell, or lands between. I don't even remember what to call the entire area, but we'll head back to the fort, and we'll be able to talk to him for the final dialogue of this side mission. Sadly enough, we won't be getting anything out of him, but if you're looking for a little bit of that lore and possibility of something to come, there will also be some monkeys that have kind of taken over. He'll have spoken about how he can apparently speak to them underneath the Erd tree and bring everybody together or something. But essentially, he has a bit of a pity party here. He's kind of like, without a fort or without a proper kingdom, how could I be the ruler of these lands? Something along those lines, and says he's going to go out and search for who could be the next ruler besides Godrick, because he just doesn't like him. Who really does like Godrick? He's a bit of a freak show. But besides that point, it's what gives me the the thought that this may be something that could bring about something in future DLC, or possibly a longer version of that quest line. But from the point of leaving that fort, we'll head over to the right down from the area, and over here on our left's actually going to be a vendor. I believe we'll be able to grab up a couple of those cookbooks over here. Going to be pretty useful for us, as well as a few more of those level 1 smithing stones. Can never have too many of them, as many people will be trying to level up more than a few of those weapons in the coming future. But going from that portion, we'll head over to the left of that guy, and then along the right side of the main path through the middle, we'll have another one of those scarabs to grab up. But crossing the main path just to the west of that location, we'll have a little bit of a ruins over here, another smithing stone inside of there, and we'll have to deal with another one of those larger bears. So be prepared for that frustration. I guess no matter what, every time I see a larger bear, I just know it's going to be a fight that I'm either going to come close to death with, or I'm just going to have ultimately just an absolutely frustrating time and never feel like I'm overpowered in this game. But underneath that, we'll have a chest to grab up one of the talismans. That's going to be the axe talisman, further increasing our power with some of those axes within the, or charge attacks, I should say, instead of not axes. Even though it does say axe talisman, you would think that would be the case. Now, over in this area, you'll notice you'll start hearing some howling off in the distance. We're going to need to head back to that first Church of America over here, just outside the first step, Lost Grace. We'll need to talk to the vendor over here, as he's going to have some dialogue after we visited the Mistwood Ruins. He's going to tell us about Wolfman himself, and he'll give us a gesture for us to call him in at these ruins over here. And this will be another type of side quest that'll be for the Wolfman himself. And if you haven't already done the Bloodhound, can't remember the name of the guy, it's like Darhill or Darwill or something, that's the name of the guy at that EverGaol. You could essentially ask for help from Wolfman himself after talking to him here, after we've had this snap gesture to spawn him into this location. He'll start saying that he's looking for Darwill, he's looking for that Bloodhound. So when you head over back to the EverGaol, even if you have defeated him or not, at the back inside there's going to be Wolfman. We'll have a dialogue with him, and essentially he'll tell you that I believe he will also give us a somber smithing stone, and he'll tell us to meet up with EG and say that we came, and there's going to be a dialogue option for him. But from that point, after we've exhausted the dialogue with Wolfman, we'll head back to that Church of America on the east side of east side of Limgrave. Now there's going to be a portal off to the right of that church itself. That's going to portal us all the way to the Beast Man back in Khalid. I wouldn't recommend taking it, but lucky enough we do have that Lost Grace pretty close by. You can go through it, grab up the Lost Grace in that location, and then just fast travel back to this location and be completely fine. But over here in this little creek area, we'll notice there's a bunch of wolves fighting a bear. Trust me, you don't have to deal with them at all. You can just ride on by them, grab up that item, and then be able to head on back. But going along that left cliffside, we will have that scarab with the Ash of War a little bit further up. A few more of those, I believe, blossoms, or what they're called. That consumable will take off the poison that you may have sustained during some of these fights, or possibly walking through some of those poisonous swamp areas. But as we head up the, what to call this main pass slope, we'll have another one of those trolls to make quick work of. Pretty much don't even fear trolls anymore at this point. Very easy to make quick work of them as long as you got that greatsword max leveled. Now in the early days, that could be a problem, but heading all the way up that ramp, over to our right is going to be the, or another one of those Church of Americas. Feel like I should be saying America, but for whatever reason, my brain, America, just keeps happening. Now from that location, we'll be heading over to the left, and inside of here we will have another one of those dungeons. Now essentially I wouldn't recommend going in through this route, considering you can't make it out the exit to the other side, but if you haven't done that tunnel just yet, if you haven't made it into Khalid, you could arguably go on through it, but we've covered that inside of my Khalid guide part 1, so no reason to actually go through the entirety of it while we're inside of Limgrave. Now over here on our left, after we've passed that point, we're going to have another mini boss fight with some of those summoners. You may have faced this a couple of times before if you're already in New Game Plus, but this may be the first time that you've come across this, if this is you going through Limgrave for the first time, or possibly the game for the first time. And we'll get another summons off of him, as well as some of that DEATHROOT that we can feed to the Beastman for some of those different abilities he throws out to us. Now you remember we had another one of those STONESWORD key dungeon type areas over here on the back right. We'll need to head back to that. It's going to be a bunch of turtles inside. And inside of this chest, I'm trying to remember, going to be a unique talisman that raises the or increases the rate at which our stamina regains. It's actually pretty useful. I would highly recommend it for some melee users. I've used it more than a few times. I believe now that I have enough endurance for my character, so I don't have to use maximum equip load to carry all this massive armor and greatsword. That talisman really works wonders, but just beyond that, we're going to have that lost grace just up that main path. We'll divert off to the left side. Going to be a couple of broken down structures over here. Trying to remember if there was even an item over here, if this is just another one of those pieces of the footage. I'm trying to keep everything as smooth as possible without too many cuts. Yeah, it was one of those moments, but just up on that main path, we'll have another vendor off to the left side. Not a whole lot to really grab up out of him, but maybe a couple of unique items. Now, this pumpkin head right here, I'll tell you right now, absolutely frustrating. I mean, you can see it from the clip right there. I mean, he just smashes his head all day long. Do not get caught in front of him. That is a very easy, frustrating stun lock to get stuck inside of, so do be aware of that guy. But past that point, we'll have another one of those checkpoints with some of those Lindell Knights over here. Pretty easy to make quick work out of them, but there will be a couple of those shaggy dogs out here. For whatever reason, those shaggy dogs seem like they're more irritating than the rest of the dogs in these games, besides the ones that are scarlet written. But over on the right, we'll have a chest that'll give us another decent type of shield. Not exactly one of the best in the game, but since this is Limgrave, a bit early in the game, this could be something that could be useful for you if you're one of those shield bearers. But from that point, we'll head over to the left of this area, kind of jump up over to the right, or I should say left. Up on top. Nope. Definitely one of those moments where we're just kind of keeping walking. Now from that point, over to our left is going to be more than a few trolls over here. It can get a bit scary if you aggro all of them. You'll notice here in a moment, but there is a statue in the middle that we'll need to kind of aggro those trolls over to. There's more than a few smithing stones inside of this statue, so I highly suggest actually breaking that one down. But as you'll notice, it gets a bit to be one of those hairier situations where it's not exactly one that you even want to fight in general. I would highly recommend just taking them one at a time, but if you want to go for that type of madness with that pack level of trolls, by all means, take your suicide mission. But just off to the right of that little checkpoint, we'll head up over onto the right cliff side. There's going to be a knight up here that'll actually give us another Ash of War ability from his death. But from that point, just behind him, we'll have a different area and a dungeon just below us from that cliffside that we'll need to head down on in. As we're going to find more than a few of those gloveworts down here. The death-touched catacombs. Now, I'm trying to remember if this was one that was filled with skeletons. By this point, I've got a bad history with skeletons when it comes to the Dark Souls games. It's literally one of the reasons the first time I ever experienced a Dark Souls game, that I just absolutely quit it. I was working 2 jobs at the time. I killed it. It reanimated and one-shot me. I mean, must have been an hour and a half into the game and just never, I just said, nah, I'm good. Not dealing with that. And even through Elden Ring, it's still just, they may not one-shot me when they reanimate, but it is frustrating to have to get that final hit. But keynote thing to talk about with those skeletons that I've seen down in the comments, somebody said that if you're using holy damage, you won't need to have that additional hit in order to keep them down on the ground. So that's one thing to keep in mind. If you're possibly running into these, maybe you have a weapon with holy damage on it that you might want to pop out for some of these dungeons. That could be pretty useful for these types of dungeons when you're just dealing with more than a few skeletons. But over on the right, another one of those gloveworts at level 1. And just back here, that's going to be the boss liver. Another bit of that consumable or crafting material over on our left side. And still a few more of those skeletons to deal with. Absolutely frustrating. But heading back to the underside over there, there's going to be another path. A couple of skeletons just laying on the ground there. As we grab up that next glowwort. And then from that point, we'll need to head over to our left. This is going to be the final portion of it. You'll notice these Limgrave will also get a type of katana dagger right there on that edge. Had to make sure I killed everything before we popped it up on screen. Not bad, does some blood loss. Could be something that could be useful for some of those builds out there that are going for the caster / melee. or at least for early game when it comes to this area. Now inside of here, I believe we'll have one of those black knife assassins. Now these guys are pretty quick, but they are quite squishy. Not as squishy as the Shade, but we'll get the assassins. Trying to remember. Assassin's Blade Talisman, which is essentially just going to give us HP on some of our critical hits. Could be pretty great for some of those lifesteal builds out there that you may be going for. Now from that point, we'll keep heading along that right ledge until we hit over to this back area where there's going to be what looks like some graveyards of some of those golems, giants, where we'll get a unique talisman that'll actually give us an enhanced attack rating with while on horseback. Pretty unique. Could be one of those things that, you know, it may be a bit frustrating, but at certain times when you know you're going to be on horseback for possibly one of those dragon fights, especially, that could be one that you want to throw on before going into that fight, just to give yourself that additional damage while you're dealing with that dragon, possibly just making it a bit quicker work while making your way through that fight. But from that point, we'll head back through that checkpoint, and there's going to be one more item that we'll need to grab up over here on the top of this broken down structure in front of where that knight was that we killed for the Ash of War, which is going to be another somber smithing stone. And then we'll head over to the right side. Now it's going to get a bit dry over here, but there is a few things that we need to talk about when it comes to these Colosseums. Still kind of irritating that this was cut content, but I'm pretty excited to see what they do with this in future DLC for the game. I believe there was a bloody finger at the very front of this, though, that I cannot pick up since this is New Game Plus. Some of those items don't respawn when you go into that New Game Plus, but I believe that was a bloody finger. And over in front of that Colosseum is going to be a location where you'll have one of the Volcano Manor side quests where you deal with some invasion NPCs. So if you've been to the Volcano Manor and you're coming back through here, that is going to be one of those spots. It should be marked on your map, though, if you do get that side quest. But from that point, we'll keep heading along the right side ledge until we hit this Lost Grace over here at this little hut. We'll have another stone sword key to pick up over here. And on our left side, there'll also be a golden seed to grab up. Now from this point, we'll kind of double back a little bit as there's a shack in the middle. Well, there's also few of those exploding anal beads over here inside of the graveyard, so do be aware of that. But we'll grab up more than a few of those golden runes, but there's going to be a shack in between this that was along the main path that we just kind of skipped by when we went along the right edge going over to that Colosseum. And this is going to be one of those vendors that's for the Ashes of War for the early game, so if you're a melee player, this is going to be one of those where you get a little bit of versatility when it comes to your options for the special ability for some of your melee weapons. I believe some of them may also work for the bowman, but I can't remember specifically. I'll have the... there it should be... I don't think I saw anything that was going to be for a bowman, but for any of those melee players out there, it could be pretty useful for you to head over to him, grab up a couple of those Ashes of War, especially in the early game when you don't have much to work with by this point. Could be that one thing that means the difference between winning that next boss fight or going up against Maggot and being able to make an easier time of it for yourself, or just some of the common enemies themselves as well. And along this main path as we go back down, there's going to be another golden seed over on our left, and we'll head up along the right ledge from this point until we see some of these jellyfishes. It'll be a bit of a graveyard situation over here, more than a few items that we need to grab up. Over on our left-hand side, we'll have another smithing stone level 1, and then we'll head up along this left cliff face wall over here. And at the very edge, or the very end of it, we'll notice there's a couple of those red jellyfish. Do be aware they'll be attacking on sight as soon as you get close, but there is one item in front of them, the magic grease, and just behind that, in front of that tombstone, we have another summons to grab up from there. Now don't even worry about all of those different jellyfish. Trust me, in a giant pack like that, you'll get stun locked pretty quickly, and you don't want to deal with that frustration right there. It's not worth the ruins, or the runes, I should say. But on the right side, we'll have another one of those Starlight shards to gain up, which we will be able to use those as currency later on for the Sylvis questline, once we obtain him as a vendor, a little bit later on as we progress through the side quest line of him. But just past that is going to be another EVERGAOL, which is probably... I'd argue it's the hardest ever jail inside of the entire game now. Some people may seem to differ with me on this, considering if you're a shield bearer or if you use a shield in order to parry this guy, you know, any Crucible Knight, you know, it does make him a bit easier, but I don't use shields, I use great swords. So if you're somebody like me, it's always a painful journey, considering him using his shield is absolutely frustrating. He's able to block pretty much everything. You gotta time your hits precisely, and he is a tanky one, to say the least. But just off to the right of that EVERGAOL, we'll be able to head over to these sort of bridge walkway over here, and there'll be a chest inside of here that'll have a certain talisman that'll increase the effective range of our bows or crossbows, I believe. But from that point, we'll need to head back over to this Lost Grace. I forget the name of it, but you'll see it on screen. We'll jump over to the left and be able to jump over the ledge. Now, sadly enough, there will be a whirlpool down here, so don't worry about that fall damage. Sadly enough, I did lose the gameplay footage from this accidentally. Was making room on my hard drive, deleted some of this footage, but after killing this guy, we will get an Ash of War for this that has a gravity ability. Quite nice for some of those wielders out there. I can't remember. There is something that buffs that as well when it comes to the talismans, but that can be a powerful one right there. And it seems I've left the green screen a bit low, so there is a cutoff right there. But we'll also get the Haligtree or Haligdrake talisman back there that'll give us further damage reduction from holy damage. But we'll be heading back to the first step, Lost Grace, after that. Heading over to the left side. Got a couple of things to gather up down here, as well as progressing the, what is his name? I believe it's Bach, but I like to call him Dobby. His side quest line will be further progressed inside of a dungeon down here as well. Then we'll also be able to make quick work out of one of these trolls again. I believe I actually did have a little bit of trouble with this one. Couldn't seem to time my dodges right, but it's just another one of those moments where it's just frustrating inside of Elden Ring, even on that new Game Plus. But right after that, we'll head down over to the beach. Don't remember what I was doing right here, but I suppose I was just talking to chat. But we'll head over to the right. We'll find a little fire over here. We'll also find, yes, I almost forgot. There's also another one of those invisible scarabs over here. Such a solid swing right there. Pretty much timed that properly, otherwise that more than likely would have taken a lot longer than it should have. But besides that point, we'll be able to, one thing to key note about those invisible scarabs, apparently the vendor over in front of the Lindell, or inside of the Lindell outskirts, has a torch that can show those illusionary walls, invisible assassins, and apparently those invisible scarabs as well. So if you're holding that torch, could make that a bit easier for you. But after we meet up with that guy at that fire that was eating some fish, took him out fairly quickly, we'll head back along the beach coast itself. We'll end up at a vendor over here that will sell us a cookbook and another couple of those smithing stone level 1s, as well as some of those consumables to take off some of those ailments that we may procure along the way. But just back before him along the cliff face is going to be a cave that we'll need to go down inside of, where we're going to meet up with Dobby again. He's battered, bruised, and beaten over here. He'll kind of whine about his journey, but we'll come back to him in a little bit after we finished off the bosses inside of here, as there's an item that we'll need to come back and give him. But down inside here, more than a few of those monkeys, and we'll get some of those bigger boy monkeys in the next room that are going to be a double boss fight. One thing to note before going in here as well is there is a gold summons that you can use to aid you, especially at the beginning of the game. I remember I think I did actually use it for this double boss fight. Helped out quite a bit, especially for a low-level wretch like me. It was a painful journey the first time through. But you can take them one at a time. As long as you don't aggro the other one, move over to the right, you should be able to make it a bit easier on yourself, as long as you're not pulling both of them at the same time, because they can be fairly quick, very irritating. Another one of those moments where I'm just doubling back just to see if I'm not missing anything. Now, we won't be making the or taking the exit to the start of the cave just yet. We'll be heading further into this cave, as it's going to progress us out to an island, which is going to be where we'll first encounter the dragon abilities vendor. I can't remember the name of it. But up here there'll also be another Lost Grace that we'll be able to grab up just in case we get some more of those Dragon Hearts. And over on our right is going to be that vendor for the, I think it's Dragon Communion. Yeah, that's going to be it. Where we'll be able to grab up some of those dragon abilities as we further progress and kill some of those dragons, gain more abilities to buy up and Dragon Hearts to buy those abilities up. Now there is one more item that we'll need to grab up on the other side of this island. It's going to be another scarab over here, which we'll get that Somber Smithing Stone level 1 from. Can't remember if there was, yeah, there is one other item, which is going to be the Smithing Stone level 2, I believe. Looks like that's a 2. But from that point, we'll be doubling back. There is one more item that we can grab up from this broken down structure over here. There'll be a little bit of text over here that basically tells us about the other Dragon Communion that's going to be in Khalid. If you don't know where that is, head over to my Khalid guide. We'll have that link down in the description. But then we'll head back to the Coastal Cave, Lost Grace, be able to talk to Dobby again, and we'll actually give him the sewing needle that we got from the double boss fight we just got inside of that cave. Exhaust his dialogue, essentially. We won't progress with his side quest line just yet. But from that point, we'll need to sit at any Lost Grace, even the one at that cave, go until it's nighttime, and then head back to this Lost Grace, and we'll be able to fight 2 different bosses that will only occur at nighttime that are closer to that Castle Morn area. This one actually does give us a unique flail weapon as soon as we kill him. You know, those Dark Knights. I'll tell you what. They're a boss fight in and of themselves, and one thing to note, if you knock them off their horse, they can pull that horse back, but if you're a shield bearer, we will get a unique Ash of War shield ability and also the Knight Rider's Flail, which does seem pretty nice. It's got the blood loss on it. Could be something that could be a solid weapon. I'll definitely be upgrading that later on and seeing what kind of class I can build out with that one. But from that point, we'll go up in between or in the opening of that wall and head along that right side of the wall itself until we come up over here, and it's going to be the Deathbird, which is still as frustrating as any time that I've ever faced one of these. I mean, you could arguably say these are definitely one of the more irritating lesser bosses to fight inside of this game, but we will get the Sacrificial Axe out of defeating that one. Not the worst weapon, but if you're an axe wielder, this could be a solid upgrade in the very beginning portion of the game. Now, from that point, we'll head back along that wall, as there's one more item that we'll need to grab up in this area that I missed the first time coming through when I had or in part 1, essentially, when we came down to this area. Got a bit distracted by all the subs that came in, but over here on the left side, inside of this little forest area, we've got another scarab to deal with. Now, he will disappear, but portal into a different location. But you should be able to just push over to him, and we'll get the Poison Mist ability from him. And I believe that's everything from Limgrave right there, guys. That's going to be the Limgrave completed fully. Part 2 guide completed. We've finally gotten all things that we could possibly need from Limgrave at this point. And then we'll be heading into the Lunaria Lakes guide right after that. Going to be pushing that out in the coming days. I know for a fact we're going to have part 1 and part 2 for that one. It's going to be pretty long itself. There's more than a few things that we need to gather up inside of that area. And then right after that, we've got the Altus Plateau, completing just about, I believe, every area guide that we could possibly need. Beyond that point, all we got to get done are a linear guide of all the bosses that we'll need to get through the game and side quests, getting the ability to get all of them done in one playthrough. It's definitely something that I haven't seen out there. It's going to take some time to get that out as well, but going to try and get that done with also some PvP builds that I'll be working on in the future. But on that note, if you want to check out some of this content live, hit that link down in the description. Follow me over at Twitch. If you'd like to see more content like this, obviously hit that subscribe button. But hope you guys enjoyed this, and have a good one.